Hi, comeback champions. What if losing everything was actually the moment you found yourself? Let's start the story. Part 1. The question that started it all. Have you ever hovered your finger over a button, knowing deep inside that one small tap could change everything, and then done it anyway? I have. And in that moment, I didn't just click a button, I detonated a bomb in my own life. It was a Tuesday, ordinary for the world, but about to be catastrophic for me. I was sitting there, slouched over my desk, eyes burning from endless hours of editing, heart pounding with frustration I couldn't shake. My YouTube dashboard stared back at me like a smug opponent who knew it had won. My cursor hovered over the delete channel option, that red-lettered warning blinking at me like it was daring me to do it. I wish I could tell you I stopped. I wish I could say I took a deep breath, counted to 10, and made the rational choice. But I didn't. One click. One stupid, impulsive, emotional click. And just like that, silence. No notifications pinging. No comments to reply to. No new subscribers to smile about. It was as if my entire digital heartbeat had flatlined. I stared at the screen, and the emptiness on it mocked me. My channel, the one I had poured my heart, soul, and sanity into for years, was now nothing but a ghost in my memory. The analytics were gone. The playlists were gone. My history was gone. I felt gone. If you've never experienced it, let me tell you, there's something horrifying about erasing years of work in under 10 seconds. You feel it physically. My chest tightened, my breathing went shallow, my palms turned damp. My mind screamed at me, "What have you done? Do you even realize what you just threw away?" And the thing is, I did realize it. I knew exactly what I had destroyed. It wasn't just about videos. It was about moments. The late nights when I was editing until sunrise because I wanted the video to be perfect. The failed takes where I'd trip over my words and burst into uncontrollable laughter. The private messages from strangers telling me my content had helped them get through their day. The tiny victories, 10 views turning into 100, 100 into 1,000, that felt like proof I was moving toward making it. Every one of those memories now lived only in my head. The internet didn't remember them. No one else could watch them. They were gone, like they had never existed. And let's be real, there was no dramatic background music, no slow-motion montage. It wasn't cinematic. It was raw, ugly, brutal. I sat there, staring into that soulless, empty dashboard, and I felt like I just burned my own home to the ground. You ever notice how regret doesn't come like a punch? It comes like a slow wave, creeping up your spine, wrapping its cold hands around your neck, whispering, "You can't undo this." That's exactly what it felt like. I remember leaning back in my chair, running both hands over my face, and thinking, this is it. I've killed my dream. Because YouTube wasn't just a hobby for me. It wasn't just uploading videos for fun. It was my identity, my creative outlet, my hope for a better future. And in 10 reckless seconds, I had ripped it all away from myself. People always say, don't make decisions when you're emotional. They're right. But here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes the emotional decision you regret the most is the one that ends up changing your life in ways you never imagined. At that moment, though, I wasn't thinking about life lessons or blessings in disguise. No, I was thinking about how I had just destroyed something I could never get back. I was thinking about the audience I had abandoned. I was thinking about all the nights I sacrificed sleep, all the days I skipped out on time with friends, All the times I worked through exhaustion. For what? For a big, fat, irreversible zero. Why did you do it? I whispered to myself, but there was no answer. Only the hum of my computer fan and the echo of my own stupidity bouncing around in my head. If there was ever a moment I felt like quitting life altogether, it was that. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, buried under the guilt, the shame, and the heartbreak, a tiny voice whispered, maybe this isn't the end. Maybe this is the start of something you can't see yet. It was hard to believe that voice, but it was there, persistent, unshakable. There's a quote I read once that suddenly made sense. Sometimes when you think you've been buried, you've actually been planted. I didn't know it then, but deleting that channel, my pride, my passion, my proof that I was somebody, would turn out to be the most important mistake I would ever make. But in that moment, all I knew was loss. And loss has a way of making you question everything you thought you were sure about. Sometimes rock bottom is the solid foundation. Part 2, the crash. At first, I told myself I didn't care. I said it out loud like some kind of defiant warrior, convincing myself that I was above it all. It's just a channel, I muttered. It doesn't define me. I repeated that sentence until it almost sounded true. Almost. But it wasn't true. Not even close. It was a lie I wrapped around myself like a cheap blanket, pretending it could keep out the cold. And yet, the cold seeped in anyway. The first few days were strange. The silence was deafening. No pings from my phone announcing a new comment. No early morning rush to check my analytics. No editing marathons that left me bleary-eyed but satisfied. The rhythm I had lived in for years was suddenly gone, replaced by a hollow stillness that felt heavier with each passing hour. That's when the cracks started forming in my mind. What am I even doing with my life? Why was I making videos in the first place? The questions came like a swarm, buzzing endlessly in my head, refusing to let me sleep in peace. Was I chasing views because I wanted validation from strangers? Or was I chasing something deeper, a sense of purpose I couldn't quite define? Had I been creating for my audience, or feeding my own ego with every like and share? The more I thought about it, the more the truth became impossible to ignore. I had built my channel on a foundation of fear. Not passion, not freedom. Fear. Fear that if I stopped, people would forget me. Fear that every video was a test I could fail. Fear that I wasn't good enough to belong in the same space as the creators I admired. I didn't realize it at the time, but deleting my channel wasn't just a reckless moment of frustration. It was my subconscious screaming from the shadows, enough. Start over. And this time, do it right. But starting over? Oh, that's a whole different battlefield. Because starting over means you have to admit the first version of you wasn't enough. It means standing in front of the mirror and seeing every crack, every flaw, every delusion you once thought was truth. There's a quote I stumbled across years ago that hit me like a punch now. The version of you that got you here won't get you there. That line haunted me. I hated how true it felt. Because if the version of me that had poured years into building that channel wasn't good enough to reach where I wanted to go, then who was I supposed to be? Starting over meant facing the brutal truth that I had been hiding behind my uploads. My content had become a mask, carefully curated, polished, filtered. Behind the scenes, I was crumbling under the pressure of constant output, terrified that one bad video would erase all my progress. When you operate from fear, every move you make is defensive. Every idea is a reaction. You're not creating because you love it. You're creating because you're scared of disappearing. And fear has this nasty way of convincing you that survival is the same as success. I realized something else in those quiet, empty days. Without my channel, I had no identity. I didn't know how to introduce myself to people without mentioning YouTube. I didn't know how to measure my worth without a subscriber count. I didn't know how to feel seen without that little red notification icon lighting up my phone. And that terrified me, because if all I was my channel, then who was I now? The silence kept growing. It stopped being just the absence of noise and started feeling like a mirror, forcing me to look at the parts of myself I had ignored for years. The doubt, the insecurity, the dependency on validation. It was all there, staring back at me. It's funny, we think crash means some big, dramatic explosion. But the worst crashes aren't loud. They're quiet. They happen inside you, slow and steady, like the walls of your mind collapsing one brick at a time until there's nothing left to hold you up. I started seeing the patterns. How every creative burnout I'd had in the past came from the same place. Not from lack of ideas, but from fear of judgment. How every time I took a break, I wasn't resting. I was hiding. How every success I celebrated felt empty because I was too busy worrying about losing it. And here's the thing no one wants to admit. Sometimes we burn down our own house because living in it has become unbearable. That's what I'd done. I didn't delete my channel by accident. I deleted it because deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living like that. Starting over wasn't just terrifying, it was humiliating. I felt like I had to crawl back to square one, except this time everyone knew I had failed. My fear of being judged had come true, and I was standing in the middle of it, naked in the spotlight. But somewhere in that humiliation, there was a flicker, a spark, an idea that maybe, just maybe, starting over wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a gift. There's a line I wrote down in my journal one night. Sometimes you have to destroy the wrong version of yourself to give birth to the right one. I didn't know it yet, but this crash, this ugly, quiet, soul-rattling crash was going to force me to rebuild. And this time, I'd be building from a place of truth. The question was, did I have the courage to face it? Part 3, the spark. It happened on a night I almost skipped over. One of those nights when sleep refuses to come, and your mind drags you through every corner of your past like it's searching for something you've forgotten. I was slouched in my chair, scrolling aimlessly through old folders on my hard drive. Most of the files were just abandoned projects, ideas that never made it past the rough draft stage. Thumbnails half designed, scripts half written, videos half edited. Then I saw it. A file with a name so generic I almost didn't click on it. Untitled _ final _ take 3.mp4. When it opened, I froze. There I was, no fancy lighting, no crisp audio, no cuts to hide my mistakes. My hair was messy, my desk cluttered, and my voice was real. I stumbled over my sentences, laughed awkwardly at myself, went off on tangents, and even paused to sip coffee mid-thought. It was raw, messy, unpolished, but it was me. And for the first time in months, maybe years, something inside me lit up. That familiar but long-forgotten sensation, the quiet ignition of purpose. That fire in your chest that whispers, this is why you started. I felt it. I didn't just remember it. I relived it. I leaned back, eyes fixed on that imperfect recording, and realized something brutal. All my perfect videos had slowly strangled the soul out of my content. The more polished I became, the more distant I felt from myself. I had been hiding behind smooth cuts, scripted lines, and flawless transitions, as if perfection could replace authenticity. But here, in this messy little file, I could hear my own heartbeat again. And I knew exactly what I had to do. I opened YouTube, a blank channel, no banner, no profile picture, 0 subscribers, an empty stage waiting to see what I would dare to put on it. It felt terrifyingly free, like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing the only way forward was to jump. My hands hovered over the mouse as I uploaded that messy, unedited video. No clickbait title, no SEO optimized description, no pressure to perform. Just me as I was in that moment. Imperfect, unfiltered, unplanned. When it finished uploading, I didn't announce it to anyone. I didn't post it on social media. I didn't beg people to watch. I just let it exist. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I checked the video stats, expecting maybe 1 or 2 pity views. But instead, it was alive. People were watching. Not just watching, they were commenting. Real comments. Honest words that cut deeper than any metric ever could. Finally, someone being real. This hit harder than anything scripted. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm sitting in the room with you. It was like I had been speaking through a mask for years, and now, for the first time, they could hear my real voice. And the crazy part? They loved it. Not because it was flawless, but because it wasn't. The pauses, the stumbles, the little moments where I admitted I didn't have all the answers. Those were the parts they connected to. Those were the parts that made them feel like I was one of them. Not some unreachable figure trying to be perfect for the camera. That's when a truth slammed into me like a wave. Your imperfections are what make your message perfect. We live in a world that worships filters, edits, and highlight reels. But people aren't starving for more perfection. They're starving for something real, something human, something that makes them feel less alone in their own messiness. I thought about the years I'd spent obsessing over every pixel, every frame, every beat of background music, thinking this was what would make people care. And yet here I was, watching strangers connect to me on a deeper level than ever before, all because I stopped trying to impress them. One comment stuck with me more than the rest. It said, "I've never seen you like this before, and I think this is you." It was simple, but it shook me, because they were right. I had never truly let myself be seen. Not like this. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up thinking about how many times I had suffocated my own voice in the name of quality. How many moments I had erased because they didn't fit the perfect picture I wanted to present. How much of myself I had hidden out of fear that people wouldn't accept the real me. But now I saw it. The real me wasn't the problem. The mask was. So I made a decision. This new channel wasn't going to be about views or likes or subscriber milestones. It was going to be about honesty. It was going to be about creating without fear. It was going to be about letting people into the chaos, not just the polished end result. There's a quote that came to me as I sat there planning my next move. Perfection inspires admiration, but imperfection inspires connection. And I realized I wasn't chasing admiration anymore. I was chasing connection. That little spark from an old, forgotten video had grown into something bigger. It wasn't just about making content again. It was about rebuilding my voice, rebuilding me. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't know if it would succeed. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of failing. Because this time, I wasn't performing for an audience. I was speaking to them. And maybe, just maybe they'd speak back. Part 4, the rise. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was subtle at first, like the slow change of seasons. One day, I was uploading cautiously, still afraid to fully let go. And then one day, I wasn't afraid anymore. The more I shared the real stuff, the raw moments, the awkward silences, the behind-the-scenes chaos, the mistakes I once would have cut out, the more people began to show up. And they didn't just show up as faceless numbers in an analytics chart. They showed up as humans. They weren't just viewers anymore. They were a community, a living, breathing circle of people who didn't just consume content, but contributed to it with their own stories, thoughts, and truths. They weren't just watching me. They were walking with me. The comments weren't just nice video or cool edit anymore. They were confessions. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. This made me cry in a good way. Thank you for making something real in a world full of fake. That's when I realized I hadn't just built a channel. I had opened a space where imperfection was not just accepted, but celebrated, where the messiness of life wasn't edited out, but embraced. And the craziest part? I was enjoying it more than I had ever enjoyed creating before. Before, every upload felt like a test I could fail. Now, it felt like a conversation I couldn't wait to have. Before, I was obsessed with numbers, views, likes, subscriber counts, ticking upward like they determine my worth. Now, I was obsessed with connection, how deeply a story could resonate, how much someone could feel understood because of something I said. Before, I chased trends like they were lifeboats, keeping me afloat in an endless ocean. Now, I was chasing truth. And truth doesn't expire. Truth doesn't depend on algorithms. Truth doesn't need a hashtag to be heard. It's wild to think about it now, but deleting my channel didn't erase my journey. It didn't delete the lessons, the growth, or the experiences. What it did was break the chains I had locked around myself. I had been trapped without even knowing it, trapped by perfectionism, by comparison, by a desperate need to be seen a certain way. And when I hit delete, I thought I had destroyed everything. But all I had really destroyed was the cage. And that's when it clicked. The best mistake of my life wasn't losing my channel. It was realizing I didn't need to be the old version of me anymore. There's this quote I carry with me now. When you stop trying to be someone, you finally become yourself. It sounds simple, but living it is a whole different game. I had spent years trying to be someone, the polished YouTuber, the trend chaser, the person who always had the right words and the perfect delivery. And in trying to be that person, I had lost the one person who mattered most. Me. When I stopped performing, I started living. When I stopped scripting every moment, life started giving me better scripts than I could ever write. When I stopped filtering my voice, I finally heard it clearly for the first time. This new chapter of my journey wasn't about proving myself to anyone, not even to me. It was about showing up honestly, even when honesty was messy. It was about being vulnerable, even when vulnerability felt like standing in the middle of a storm without an umbrella. And here's what I learned. When you dare to be real, you give other people permission to be real too. That's the secret to connection. Not perfection, not polish, not playing a role. Realness. Every video I made now carried that energy. I wasn't aiming for viral. I was aiming for valuable. I didn't want millions of passive viewers. I wanted hundreds of active souls who felt something when they watched. Because feelings last longer than clicks. I started noticing something beautiful. My audience began talking to each other in the comments, encouraging one another, sharing their own imperfect stories. They weren't here for me anymore. They were here for us. And that's when I knew this wasn't my community. It was our community. The rise I was experiencing wasn't just about growth. It was about depth. And depth, I realized, is far more powerful than reach. There's another line that lives in my head now. Better to be deeply known by a few than barely noticed by millions. This wasn't the rise I expected when I first started on YouTube years ago. But maybe that's the beauty of it. The rise you don't plan for is often the one you truly need. The old me would have been looking at charts, planning the next big idea, strategizing how to catch the wave of the next trend. The new me? I'm here, coffee in hand, sitting in front of a camera, speaking my truth without worrying about how many people will hear it. Because the right people will hear it. They always do. And if you ask me now whether I regret deleting my channel, not for a second, because that mistake turned out to be my liberation. And sometimes freedom doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go so completely that you give yourself no choice but to grow. Part 5, your turn. So why am I telling you this? Because maybe right now, you're standing at your own turning point, staring at the wreckage of something you thought would last forever. Maybe it's not YouTube for you. Maybe it's a business that crumbled after years of sacrifice. Maybe it's a dream you nurtured since childhood, now lying cold and untouched. Or maybe it's a door you knocked on for years, only to have it slammed in your face without warning. And in this moment, you might feel empty, lost, like the story you were writing for yourself has been torn apart in the middle. But here's the truth. It's not over. Not even close. The ending you think you're seeing right now might just be the plot twist that changes everything. Life has this brutal, beautiful way of ripping away what you thought you needed, so it can hand you what you were truly meant for. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like betrayal. But buried inside that chaos is the seed of something you couldn't have imagined before. So if you've lost something, let it shape you. Let's strip away the fear, the need for approval, the fake layers you built just to fit in. Let it teach you that you were never defined by what you lost. You were defined by what you chose to do next. And when you rise again, rise without apology. Build something that isn't tied to numbers, validation, or anyone's permission. Build something so real, so true to who you are, that even if it all falls apart again, you'll smile, because you'll know you didn't just create a thing, you created yourself. One day, you'll look back and realize that loss wasn't a tragedy. It was the door you didn't know you needed to walk through. And you'll call it exactly what it was. The best mistake of your life. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.